Do you ever wonder why people seem to be going so crazy? I mean, really, it seems like everywhere you look, people are basically losing their minds. And this isn't just about politics. They're believing all kinds of crazy things. They're acting out, being so negative and aggressive with each other. It just doesn't make sense. And it only seems to be getting worse. So why is this happening? What is going on? And most important, is there anything we can do about it? I'm David Levin, author of Raise Your Inner Game, founder of the Raise Your Inner Game Sports Academy. In this video, I'm going to answer those questions. And the hope is that it will give you some comfort to finally have a way to understand it, because trying to figure it out can make you crazy too. And also that it'll give you some hope, because there actually is something you can do about it. And we'll get to that in just a minute. But first, what is going on? Why is everyone going so crazy? For that, we need to take a quick look at some basic human psychology. You may have seen this before, but this is Maslow's pyramid, or officially Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The idea here is, at the bottom of the pyramid are our most basic, primitive needs: food, shelter, safety. At the top are our most evolved, aspirational desires: purpose, creativity, happiness, and so on. And as our lower level needs are met, we're free to move higher on the scale, and we generally want to do that. Our natural impulse is to move higher up this pyramid. But if we're in a situation where our lower needs are not being met, we get pulled back down into a more primitive, survival-oriented state, focused on getting those basic needs met. And where we are on this scale from one moment to the next depends on what's going on in that moment. We're not at any one point all the time. We move up and down like on an elevator. So that's the basic pyramid. And the important point with this, for what we're talking about today, is that our behavior changes depending on where we are on this scale. Near the bottom, we think and act in more primitive ways: fearful, defensive, negative, territorial, survival-oriented behaviors. At the top, we act in more evolved ways: open, caring, generous, trusting. This is also where we do our best, most creative thinking. So at the bottom, we're at our worst. At the top, we're at our best. That's a good overall picture of how our inner game works. So here's the question for you. When someone feels like they're vulnerable or under threat in some way, where do they move on this pyramid, up or down? They move down, right? When we feel threatened in any way, real or imagined, we move down the scale. In other words, our natural response to threat is to get more fearful and to lose our ability to think clearly. Clear thinking happens at the top of the pyramid. At the bottom, it's base emotion and survival instincts. And that is why people are going crazy. As life gets more and more stressful and uncertain, which it does pretty much every day, we are all getting pulled down to our lower levels, which causes us to think and act in more and more negative ways. Worse yet, this process creates a downward spiral. We get pulled down, we act in lower level ways, that triggers other people and pulls them down. They act in more lower level ways, which triggers us again, and down we go. This is what we're seeing in the world. And it's actually been going on for quite a while. This whole project, for me, thinking about this problem and how to help with it, started when I noticed that this exact thing was happening to me. This was back around 2009. We were living in Minneapolis at the time. Our kids were like 1 and 4, pretty young. Margaret and I were both quite busy, so it was a bit of a stressful time, but things were also pretty great. We were definitely happy. But I started noticing that I was not acting like my normal, happy self. I am generally pretty chill, at least on the surface. I do worry. I am generally upbeat and positive. I think people would agree with that. But more and more, I was getting really easily frustrated, short-tempered, crabby, negative, reacting at times in ways that were actually embarrassing to me. Like, I felt less mature, less proud of myself. So at some point, it was enough of a pattern that it got my attention. Something's not right here. Something's going on with me. I don't fully recognize myself lately. So I sat down, I thought about it, and I realized just what we're talking about today. Life has gotten really crazy in these last few years, and the stress and pressure are turning me into a different person. Now, this is 2009. That seems quaint. Now, things are many times crazier and more stressful now. But at the time, we'd just come out of the 2008 financial crisis. There was the crash and the big bailout. The economy was a mess. We were still dealing with the aftermath of September 11th and the Iraq War. Personally, having kids that young, lots of stress there too. So I just saw clearly that that's what was going on for me. The stress and pressure of life were turning me into a different person. And that is exactly what is happening today all around the world. There are certainly other factors at play. Social media, divisive politics, disinformation, increasing wealth inequality. But at the root, those aren't the actual cause of the problem. They're just bigger and bigger triggers. The root is our built-in psychological wiring that causes us to slip into a more primitive state when we're feeling threatened. And by the way, this brings up an important point. As we're thinking about people going crazy and all the problems that are coming from that, it's important to remember it's not their fault. If you're being affected, it's not your fault. We can't help this happening. We are literally wired to react this way to threats and pressure. And for most of history, it was a great system. When you're under threat and you kick into survival mode, you're more likely to survive, which is what you want, right? That's a very good thing. The problem is the threats we face today aren't like that. They're not life or death in the same way, even though they might feel like it at times. In fact, a lot of the time, they're not even real. They are made up by people who have their own agenda and are manipulating us for their benefit. They are exaggerated by companies who make money selling our attention. Most of the threats we're reacting to are not a real danger for us. Unfortunately, our wiring can't tell the difference. So all these pressures continue to build, and we keep moving farther and farther down the pyramid. That is why we're in the place we're in, with people all around the world seemingly losing their minds. We actually are losing our minds. We're losing the ability to think clearly and to be open and positive and creative. Now, not everyone is feeling it in the same way. It varies with personal situation, work, culture, country. But this is how our wiring works, and there's no doubt that the stress and pressure are getting worse every day. So what can we do about it? How can we stop this downward spiral? This brings us to the happy part of the video, because the good news is you actually can do something about it. And it's ultimately much easier than you might expect. So we've said that the problem is that we have this unconscious reaction, our built-in psychological wiring that causes us to get pulled into a more primitive state when we feel threatened in some way, right? That picture tells us how to fix it. All we have to do is break that cycle. If we can figure out how to interrupt that unconscious response and keep from getting pulled down, we can stop the downward spiral. Now, that might sound easier said than done, but again, it's not really that hard once you see how things work. I'll give you one quick example. If you've ever done any sitting meditation where you just sit and quiet your thoughts, you already know how this works and how to control it. So you're sitting there, focusing on your breath or repeating your mantra or whatever you're doing to help stay focused and present in the moment. Then, pretty quickly, typically, you find yourself thinking about something, often your thoughts. When that happens, you notice and you gently bring yourself back, right? That's how that works. And even if you haven't done that yourself, you can imagine what it's like. So breaking this cycle we're talking about, keeping ourselves from getting pulled down by these negative triggers, is the exact same process. You're going along, being your normal self, something comes up, triggers your threat response, starts pulling you down. You notice and you say, nope, not going there. It's not real, or whatever, and you don't get pulled down. You stay up where you were. It really is about that simple. This is a specific inner game skill you can easily learn and develop. Technically, the skill is called cognitive control, which just means you can direct your thoughts and attention rather than having them jump around like they tend to do. And to develop it, you just need to practice those two things. Pay attention to what's going on internally so it's not all unconscious anymore, and resist that downward pull when it comes up. Nope, not going there. That's all it takes, and you can easily learn to do it. And I know that because first, that's exactly what I did back in 2009 when I noticed this happening in myself. Once I saw it was happening, I got more focused with my inner game, started paying more attention, being more intentional with it, and I was back to my normal self pretty quickly. And of course, now I hear all the time from people who've taken our Sports Academy training or read the Raise Your Inner Game book how easy it is to learn and the incredible difference it makes in their lives. So I know you can do it and that you will absolutely love what this inner game skill does for you. The only bad news, I guess, if the dream is to be able to reverse this downward spiral in the wider world, is that we can only do this for ourselves. We can't do it for anyone else. We can help indirectly by resisting the pull when we're around other people. They'll see that, see the difference, not get pulled down by our reactions. But ultimately, everyone has to figure this out for themselves. Also, it's not a one-time thing. You don't just take a pill and it's fixed. Our wiring doesn't change. The triggers never go away. So we have to keep paying attention and resisting the pull every day to stay up where we want to be. But it can be done, and our lives are way better in every way when we do. So that is why people are going so crazy and what we can do to fix it. I hope that helps. I hope it's comforting to be able to at least make some sense of what's going on and to know that something actually can be done about it. I know it helps me feel better about where things are. Bottom line, if it seems like the stress and pressure of life are turning you into a different person, work on these two things. Pay attention to what's going on internally and resist the downward pull when it comes up. Let me know if you have any questions. Leave a comment here or head over to RaiseYourInnerGame.com. You can check out our Sports Academy training for athletes and the Raise Your Inner Game book while you're there. And of course, if you know someone who could use some help with this, please share this video with them. The more people there are in the world who know how to break this cycle and raise their inner game, the better off we all will be. All right, thank you. Keep up the good work. I wish you the best.